Greetings, LEGO fans! A few months ago, I fulfilled my long-time goal of installing a subway system under my LEGO Shelf City. I was pretty happy with the initial results, but there was certainly a lot of room for improvement. So, I thought it was high time I gave this subway the glow-up it deserved. Right off the bat, I was hungry to expand the city itself once again, which this time would require turning the corner. So, following the same pattern as I did last time, I installed another 1x16 shelf with a 1x8 platform hanging underneath. This gave me another 4 base plates worth of space for city expansion, as well as more track for the subway to travel. This expansion introduced a conundrum, however. I no longer had enough nougat masonry brick to cover the entire border of the shelves, so I had to pivot and use the gray masonry brick from my recently demolished Winter Village to complete the border. Don't worry though, those nougat bricks will make another appearance within this video. With the city expanded to pretty much maximum size for the space, I wanted to start giving the whole shelving unit a more brick-built appearance. As such, I built the beginnings of a mountain facade on either side of the city, which hides a lot of the wood-built shelving and offers a bit more immersion for the overall scene. Now to the subway-specific upgrades. One of my biggest frustrations in the original design were the staircases leading down to the platforms. As much as I tried to avoid it, these things would get a fatal blow from a passing elbow at least once a week, so I knew they couldn't be a long-term solution. In addition to that, there were many comments on how the lack of an elevator made it impossible for wheelchair users to access the subway. This was particularly egregious because the set I chose to use as the subway car includes a minifig in a wheelchair. I looked at multiple options, but ultimately the height of the lift, aesthetics, and space limitations led me to adapt the much simpler elevator design featured in the Town Hall modular set. I was pretty shy about cutting holes in my shelves when I first built them, but it became clear that this would be a necessity if I wanted a practical elevator to work. With the use of a 1.5-inch spade bit and a jigsaw, this was a simple but pretty darn messy process. In hindsight, I really should have moved much more Lego out of the way, but luckily this little handheld vacuum I got for Christmas really saved the day on this one. Once the holes were cut, it was just a matter of fitting everything into place and making the transitions look seamless. I can now proudly say that the subway platform is wheelchair accessible. Speaking of the platform, that was another weakness of my initial subway, since there basically wasn't one. Naturally, I didn't exactly love that, so I used my newly available nougat masonry bricks, along with some 16x16 gray plates, and a bunch of gray and yellow tiles from Pick-a-Brick to build a nice long platform on either side. I retained the coffee shop and signage from the downtown streetcar set, but also filled the rest of the platform with benches, a bunch of little scenes, and of course the audience favorite New York City postcard, which now reads even more like a fun display you'd see in a real underground. Just having the studs available down there makes the space feel so much more alive, and though I do eventually plan to build a light blue back wall spanning the whole distance, I had reached my budget limitations for this go-around, so that'll have to wait. Though I liked the lighting in my original subway design, those puck lights proved to be absolute battery hogs, so I decided to replace them with plug-in LED strip lights after all. These are the same brand as the ones on my ceiling train system, so they can both be turned on and color controlled by the same remote. This is vastly more convenient than before, and since I quadrupled up the lighting strips, it's plenty bright down there. The final thing I wanted to improve was the operation of the subway car itself. Previously, I just had to use the remote to start and stop it before it crashed into the wall. A bunch of you suggested that I use a color sensor to automate that process. So, since color sensors went on sale during the holiday season, I picked one up and gave it a try. It's a bit haphazardly installed on the front at the moment, but I wanted to make sure the thing worked before I finessed its integration into the vehicle. I was brand new to both color sensors and the Create tool in the Powered Up app, so this was a bit of a learning curve for me. Now, I'm absolutely no expert on this app by any stretch of the imagination, but I figured it out just enough to make it work. So, you're going to go over to the Create tab, and click the plus button to create a new project. We're just going to call this Subway. And here we are. So we'll click on Coding, and it'll give you a bunch of options to build out a program for your train. So the first thing we're going to do is click on these three little dots here, and then the furthest one on the left has these three little icons. We'll click on the one that has 3, and that'll give you the most options. Okay, so the very first thing we'll do is drag this play button into here, which will get things started. And then we'll go over to the motor section, which will give us the option to start the train going. Now on the bottom here, it gives you the option to choose which plug-in port to use. Our motor here is plugged into A, so we'll keep that on A. And then this gives you the option to choose the amount of power you want it to run at. Let's say 40 for now, which is 40%. Okay, so now we want to integrate the color sensor. So we go over to Sensors, and Color Sensor is the furthest one, or the second furthest one on the left there. So we'll drag that in here. Now, our color sensor is plugged into port B, so we'll change it to B. And the color that's on the far side is going to be green. So we'll select green. So when it sees green, then it will continue on to the next action, which is we want it to stop at that far station. So we'll grab this little icon that has the little line through it for stopping the train. Of course, that's on port A. And once we're stopped, we want it to wait at that station for a while. So we'll put a timer on it, and let's say 5 seconds. Now, if we want it to go back the other way, we'll put another one of these motors on here, port A as before, but this time we're going to have it go at -40, so it goes back the other direction. And it'll go and go until, once again, it sees the color on the other end. This will be on port B, and the one I have on the other end is indeed red. So we want it to stop the motor in port A, and again, wait another 5 seconds. Now, we've got a full loop basically going on here. And so what we need to do to make this loop infinitely is select this guy right here, and then drag all of the components that we currently have into it. So that is going to be our sequence for keeping the train running continuously. And now let's test and see if it actually works. And voila, we have ourselves an automated subway system that hopefully doesn't crash into the wall. And it wouldn't be a proper update video without a grand tour. So let's go ahead and start on the new side of things. We've got the rock wall right there. And then this little park section houses the brand new elevator shaft, which heads down to the subway, but we'll go down there in a minute. Tudor Corner sits over here. Absolutely not sure if that's going to be the final place for it, but it seems like a good enough place for it now. Got the tour bus. And of course, if there's ever a bunch of room that needs to be filled up, that airport always comes down to fill us out. So absolutely not permanent, but just there to kind of fill things out and make things look good. Grimald Place. Again, totally not a final place for that, but I thought it was a fun addition to the city for now. Got the Jazz Club, the Daily Bugle, the Up House floating above. Then pretty much everything here is set where it was before, except for the Haunted Mansion, which has now made permanent residence here, so that we can always have an adventurer's presence in the modern city. Then there's our house with our little family right there, and the bookshop, the Parisian restaurant, and the Palace Cinema. Now, putting an elevator shaft over here necessitated building kind of a larger park area here, which includes the new corner kiosk, which came in the Tudor Corner set, as well as a few trees and just some nice little walking paths along here as well. So now we descend into the subway, and looks like my daughter's been up to building something right there. But we've got the coffee shop and a little hot dog stand, the forklift from the Lego delivery truck, a few people waiting, sitting on their benches, the New York City postcard, which now I definitely want to grab a few more of those of places that we've been and put them around, and more people sitting and waiting, the subway itself. And I know this doesn't make a ton of sense, but this seemed like a good place to display the Lego delivery truck. Don't really know how it got down there or the practicalities of it, but there it sits. And finally, the other side, which, since this part of the city is sort of under construction, thought it made sense to have some of the construction workers waiting to go home. And then the elevator shaft that takes you back up. So that is the city as it stands now. Many improvements, many expansions yet to come, but I'm really happy with where it is right now.
These improvements have really stepped up the game for my Shelf City, and I can't wait to see what further updates will bring. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future upgrades, and check out my Retro Lego series on this channel, which dives into the beloved themes of Lego's past. And until next time, keep building.